I want to tell you guys a little bit about my family, about me, because there's so much stuff that has been going on, and I'm sure you guys have heard so much of everything. But anyway, George lived in Minneapolis about 3 years, and I lived there as well. But I'm originally from North Carolina. My mother had 14 children. She had 10 girls and she had 4 boys. And she raised us up in some very hard times. My parents were mostly sharecroppers. And I'm not sure if many people know what that is, but you know, sharecroppers, you do, all right, you work on the land, but you don't own anything. And my parents worked for years without owning anything. But my great-grandfather, Thomas Hillary Stewart, he owned his first land when he was 21 years old. And he was able to become a free man when he was 8 years old. So, you know, back then they called them the free papers, but my grandfather was able to tell me that history. But my mother, she raised us up to be more like submissive and passive because that's what she was taught. I mean, I grew up in the 70s. Now, this is in the 70s. I grew up where my mother taught me that you do not enter a white home from the front door. You have to go from the back. I was also taught that you address white people by their first and last name. You never call them by their first name. So this is in the 70s now, so that's not too long ago. So, but my mother, you know, she did that because she didn't really know any better, because she had to drop out of school at 13 and raise kids. All she wanted for us was to have a high school diploma. She couldn't see college because she never had that vision for her. So her vision was for us just to graduate from high school. So through all of that, when I look back on it, the reason why she was teaching us this thing is because she was trying to protect us. But what we didn't understand growing up is that the white race that was going on with the races, it was to keep us in our place. In other words, they didn't want us to be above them, but definitely not their equal. And my mother wanted to protect us that way. I remember one pivotal thing that happened to me growing up. And like I still say, you guys, this is in the 70s, so and people are really shocked by when I say that. But we weren't able to ride the school bus. Even though it was desegregated and they said we couldn't ride the school bus and that had been done away with, we still couldn't do it. This was in the 70s. And we lived in an old raggedy house. You know, if you raise up down south, sometimes those houses are back in the woods and you have to walk all the way up to the path to catch the bus. And we did that. And there was one particular moment that we walked that path to catch the bus. When we got there were hands out the window. Everybody's waving, "Bye, niggers, bye." This is the white train, not the soul train. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Soul Train, but at that time was a very popular show. This went on for several days. My father, he went out there to fight with the school, and this is in the 70s, fighting with the school so we could able to get on the school bus. Once we got on the school bus, this is what they did. They didn't allow us to sit down. So we had to get on the school bus, and my neighbor kids and us, we were standing in the middle of the school bus. And that bus driver, I'm telling you how evil he was. He would go around these curves so we could intentionally fall. My poor neighbor friend, James Rowe, bless his soul, he's passed away. All he did, you guys, he just accidentally just bumped that white person. It wasn't his fault because the bus driver drove around that curve so fast. And once he just barely touched him, that white guy stood up and took his open hand and just hit him as hard as he could. Hit him as hard as he could. And I just saw the tears roll down his face. I couldn't help him. There was only a few of us on the bus. As soon as the bus came to the first thing, we stopped, got off the bus, and again they said, "Bye, niggers. This is the white train, not the soul train." I remember telling my mom, "I don't want to get back on that bus. I don't want to go through that." You know what my mother said? "You're going to get on that bus. Y'all are going to get on that bus because my goal is for you guys to get a high school diploma." And I'm thinking, I don't want to get beat up to get no high school diploma. But she was determined. So the next day, this is what happened. My mother walked with us. And she said, go ahead and get on that bus. So I looked back, the bus come, it stopped. And they were ready for us, you know. So I looked back at my mom, and she had both her hands on her hip, you know, go on. Me, my twin sister, my neighbor friend, we got on that bus, scared. We knew we was going to stand up. In our mind, we weren't going to sit anyplace. But what happened as I got on that bus, I remember heading towards the back. And guess what? One girl, about my age, maybe 12, she was white. And she stood up. And you know what she did? She said, my mother said that's not right. They deserve to sit down. That's what she said. Everything was quiet. Next thing I know, legs were moving out of the seat. People were getting up. So I tell that story because it took one person. It took that white girl, no more than 12 years old, to stand up. And then when I think about my nephew, who laid there with a knee on his neck, 3 police officers now, well-trained, wisdom, older, not one could do anything. Felt they couldn't do anything. They just let him die. So that's why I'm telling you guys, sometimes it don't take a whole lot of people to make a change. Sometimes it takes one person to make a difference. And if one of those police officers would have stood up and said, this is not right. You are not going to do this to him. If one would have said that, my nephew would have probably been alive. So anyway, I want to say it was a very sad time for my family. We cried many nights, you know, and we pretty much cried together. But one thing I know, that my nephew did not die in vain. You guys know him as George Floyd, but we know him as Perry because he's family, and that's what we called him. But he did not die in vain because his death has created a movement all around the world that gives every last one of you guys the opportunity to make a difference. Laws are being changed. Statues are being knocked down. Confederate flags are coming down. And you have that power. That's why voting is so important, because what we're going through right now. So even though this has opened the door, we still need a conviction. We still need a conviction. And so a lot of people ask me all the time, like, why do I think people were moved by this? And I said, you know what? This happened at the time of a pandemic. People were lucky to be home. We call it luck, but it's really God. To see everything that no person, white, black, or white, can deny. That what they saw was inhumane. So anybody that watched that video that day that had a heartbeat, know that was wrong. So the world was traumatized by this. We all were grieving, and we're still grieving. But you know what? We're going to heal together. We're going to heal together, and each and one of you guys are going to make a difference by voting and getting out there. I don't want to talk too long because I want to give my niece, George's first cousin, a chance to say, but I just want to share you that story and continue to fight. Continue to fight, because justice for George means justice for all.